Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do the section overview for the ACT English portion. So I hope that you'll be learning what this section assesses, and we'll also figure out what to expect for the format and the question types on this section of the ACT. Now the first thing that we want to think about is how this section is actually structured. So for the English test, we're going to see 5 passages. You'll have 75 questions, which means you have 15 questions per passage, and you have to accomplish all of this in 45 minutes. So, same way you might have felt when you learned about the reading section, this does sound a little bit intimidating. It has more questions than any other section of the ACT, but we're going to figure out exactly how to approach things, and you're going to know exactly what to expect so that this is actually a manageable task for you. You might also be curious about how the timing breaks down. So with 75 questions in 45 minutes, that gives us approximately 36 seconds per question, and that includes our reading time. But by the end of this course, you're going to feel great about getting them all done and getting them done well. Now, in the structure of the whole test, the English section actually comes first. Okay, so one thing I would recommend is that you do authentic timed practice that occurs at the same time of day that you plan to take your actual ACT. For example, if you're not a morning person, okay, and you have to come in and focus on something really detailed like the English section right away, that's going to be something you want to work on to ensure that you've got the appropriate level of focus at that time of day to be successful in that exam. Now, on the other hand, this can also be a really big advantage to have the English section first because you're fresh, you haven't exhausted yourself by sitting down for hours taking an exam, so it gives you the opportunity to have a really strong start on the ACT. Now, what's the actual setup of this test? Essentially, this test is asking you to put yourself in the position of a writer, and writers make decisions about how to revise and edit a text. So you will come across a variety of short essays that are in different genres, and they're going to provide you with a variety of different rhetorical situations to work inside. You might be wondering though, what is a rhetorical situation? I've never heard of that before. So the rhetorical situation discusses the relationships between these different elements that shape the decisions an author makes while they're writing. Now, these elements themselves are probably familiar to you. You've probably heard of audience, purpose, topic, writer or author, and context. And when we think about the rhetorical situation, we're thinking about how these things influence each other. On the ACT, for example, you might be asked a question about how a writer can best achieve a specific purpose for an individual topic. Okay, so it's going to be kind of understanding the relationships between these things that will help us be successful on the ACT English section. What does this section of the test actually assess though? Okay, so at core, we're looking here at your writing skills and your language skills. So let's look now at how your scores will actually be reported. You will get 4 scores for the English section of the test. The first one will be your overall section score. It'll be between a 1 and a 36, and that's based on all 75 questions. Now, in addition to that overall score, you'll also have 3 reporting category scores that are based on your specific knowledge and skills. The first category is production of writing. We also have knowledge of language and conventions of standard English. So let's dig into those a little bit more deeply. Production of writing, okay, is the first category of question that you'll see. Notice that it counts for about 29 to 32% of your overall questions. These questions require you to apply your understanding of the purpose and focus of a piece of writing. So here we really are getting into the head of a writer and making decisions. The first subtopic here is topic development. So you've got to be able to show that you understand and can control the rhetorical aspects of a text. You need to be able to identify the purposes of different parts of a text. You need to be able to determine whether a text has met its intended goal, and you need to evaluate the relevance of materials in terms of a text's focus. There is one other category as well in the production of writing section, and that focuses more on organization, unity, and cohesion. So here we're going to use various strategies to make sure that the texts are logically organized, that they flow smoothly, and that they have effective introductions and conclusions. So remember, these questions make up about 30% of the ones you'll be answering. The second category of question that you'll answer is called knowledge of language. And notice you won't answer very many of these questions on the English section. They only make up between 13 and 19% of the overall questions. Here, you have to show effective language use by ensuring precision in word choice, ensuring concision in word choice, maintaining consistent style, and maintaining consistent tone. And finally, the third category of questions you'll encounter are the conventions of standard English. Notice these make up the bulk of the questions you'll be answering. They're over 50%. Here you have to apply an understanding of the conventions of standard English grammar, usage, and mechanics to revise and edit text. So the first way you'll do this is through sentence structure and formation. Here you're going to see things like sentence fragments, run-ons, and misplaced modifiers, and you'll need to be able to correct those things. You'll also want to be able to ensure parallel structure in a text. The second portion of conventions is punctuation. So here's where your knowledge of commas, apostrophes, dashes, colons, and semicolons comes into play. And the third portion of our conventions category is usage. So this includes topics such as subject-verb agreement, verb tense, pronoun usage, and adjectives and adverbs. Now let's dig in and look at the specific kinds of questions you'll be answering on the English section. This section is a little bit more complicated in terms of its format compared to some of the others on the ACT. So it's really important that we take the time to understand exactly what kinds of questions can be asked of us so that we spend our effort actually answering them rather than trying to figure out what to do. Okay. So the first type here is simply going to refer to an underlined portion of the passage, and it will offer several alternatives to that underlined portion. Your job is to decide which of these choices is the most appropriate in the context of the passage. So you'll notice over here that we have a phrase that has been underlined. It has the number 16 below it, and then there is a question 16 that corresponds to that underlined portion on the left-hand side of the page. The second type of question, doesn't necessarily give us alternatives to an underlined portion. This question is going to ask about an underlined portion, a section of the passage, or the passage as a whole, and you have to decide which choice is best given the question that has been posed. So if you look here, we'll see question 30 actually asks about the whole passage, and we have a variety of answer choices here. It's important to note that many questions offer no change as one of the choices. This is a valid answer choice. Sometimes students have a tendency to be afraid to select no change because they think there must be something wrong with the portion in question, but it's a valid choice and it will be the correct answer approximately 25% of the time. So make sure you're aware of that and don't be afraid to leave things as they are if they are not broken. You might be wondering if the questions on this test are organized from easiest to hardest, okay? And just like the reading section, these are not arranged in order of difficulty. But we do have to remember that certain passages and certain types of questions might be harder for you than for other people. And some questions might take more time than other questions do. So we do have to factor this in as we're figuring out our best personal strategies for the English section later this week. Now we're going to take a look at a few sample pages from an English test so we can familiarize ourselves with the instructions, the layout, and the various components. So what we see here is the first page that you'll be able to see when you are able to break the seal and open up your ACT on test day. Okay. Up at the top, we see directions. Notice how long these are? They're actually pretty complicated, okay? So by the time test day comes around, we need to have these memorized so that we don't waste time reading them, okay? So make sure that you do take the time to read the instructions beforehand and understand exactly what's being asked of you before test day comes around. Here's another thing that we want to notice, okay? We see passage 1 and we actually have a passage title. Remember that passage titles might provide you with some valuable information that indicates important aspects of the rhetorical situation, okay? The title is helping you understand the topic, perhaps the author's purpose, so don't ignore it. Make sure you read everything that's on the page, okay? And now that we've actually got the full page in front of us, we can see here how we have underlined portions of text with a number below it on the left-hand side, okay? Your passages will always be on the left-hand side. And those will correspond to a question number that's on the right-hand side of the page. Now, in some passages, you'll actually see paragraph numbers above each paragraph. Okay, this is a good hint that you're going to be asked a question about the arrangement or the organization of these paragraphs. Not all of the passages will have them, but some will, so it's something to be on the lookout for. And finally, we want to know that these little boxes are also indicating a question. So while most of the questions are underlined with the number below, some questions have a box. These questions typically refer to a larger section of the passage, like an entire paragraph or even the passage as a whole. So when we take a look at number 13 over here, for example, we see that it's talking about this paragraph, this particular paragraph, and what that paragraph would lose if a sentence were deleted. So at this point, we have completed our overview of the ACT English section. We've talked about what this section of the test assesses, how your scores are reported, and what you can expect in terms of format and question.